Rockipedia.
Welcome to Rockipedia. Tonight's artist is Foreigner. Platinum hard rockers, equally talented with biting anthems and mammoth power ballads, creating an impressive string of hit songs through the 70s and 80s. Formed in New York City in 1976 by British guitarist Mick Jones, with himself and two other members, ex-King Crimson member and saxophonist and keyboardist Ian MacDonald and drummer Dennis Elliott, who were British, and the other half of the band, which included keyboardist Al Greenwood, bassist Al Gagliardi, and vocalist Lou Gramm, who were all Americans. This inspired the name Foreigner. In November of '76, after 6 months of rehearsing together, they went into the studio to start recording their debut album with producers John Sinclair and Gary Lyons at Atlantic Recording Studios. On March 8, 1977, they released their debut album, the self-titled Foreigner.
And I guess it's just the woman in you that brings out the man in me. I know I can't help myself. You're all in the world to me. It feels like the first time. Feels like the very first time. It feels like the first time. It feels like the very first time.
After selling 4 million copies and having 3 hit singles right out of the chute, Feels Like the First Time, Cold as Ice, and Long, Long Way from Home, they stayed in the top 20 for a solid year in the U.S. It's a good classic rock album, but besides the hit songs, a lot of filler songs on this album. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. By May of '77, they were headlining big arenas. After a year on the road, they played in front of 200,000 people at the California Jam 2 on March 18, 1978. A month later, they went on their European tour. Not too many bands have to face the pressure of topping success after a debut album, but this band did, as they went in to record their second sophomore album, released on June 20th, 1978, entitled Double Vision. On Atlantic Records, Mick Jones and Ian MacDonald helped produce the album, along with producer Keith Olsen. Trying very hard to match the debut album, they wrote 3 more hit songs: title track Double Vision, Hot Blooded, and Blue Morning, Blue Day. The album was almost identical to the first album, so I give it the same 3 out of 5 stars. Double Vision actually topped the first album in sales by selling 5 million copies compared to the 4 million copies of the debut album that sold. Like the first album, it went gold and eventually going 5 times platinum. On September 10th, 1979, they brought the release of the band's third album, Head Games.
A daydream for hours it seems. I keep thinking of you, yeah, thinking of you. These daydreams, what do they mean? They keep haunting me. Are they wanting me? Daylight turns into night. We try and find the
The band amazingly continued their success by selling another 5 million copies of this album, reaching again eventually the 5-time platinum status. Incredible. With hit singles, title track Head Games, Dirty White Boy, Love on the Telephone, and Woman. Besides Rev on the Heartline, the rest of the album is also full of fillers as the band stays on a consistent basis. So I will, once again, give this album another 3 out of 5 stars. The band faced controversy over the album cover, which shows a sexy girl sitting on a urinal in the men's room, wiping off her phone number off the bathroom wall. Critics and religious groups bashed the band. Almost most radio stations wouldn't play songs off the album because of this. The band also went through changes during this time, firing bassist Ed Gagliardi for his poor performance and playing, replacing him with Rick Willis, who played on the album. Also, saxophonist Ian MacDonald and keyboardist Al Greenwood also left the band after the making of the album. Due to Mick Jones and Lou Gramm taking more control of the band is the reason why they left the band. As Lou and Mick took more control of the band and the songwriting. But the guys were putting out hit songs. I don't see what the problem was, but hey, I wasn't in the band. I can't tell you. But let's carry on. So the band now stripped down to a quartet, brought in some studio session musicians to record and tour. The band brought in a famous producer, Mutt Lange, to produce their next album. Released on June 22nd, 1981, the band's 4th studio album entitled 4.
That one guitar felt good in his hands. Didn't take long to understand. Just one guitar slung way down low was a one-way ticket, only one way to go. So he started rocking, ain't never gonna stop. Gotta keep on rocking. Someday gonna make it to the top and be a jukebox hero. Got stars in his eyes.
Maze Mike.
Incredibly, the band's success grew even more, with this record doing well worldwide, eventually selling over 7 million copies in the U.S. and staying at the number 1 position on the Billboard charts for 10 straight weeks. Wow. Once again, the band had an album with 3 hit singles: Urgent, Jukebox Hero, and Ballad Waiting for a Girl Like You, which remained in the number 2 spot on the Billboard 100 for 10 straight weeks. The album also featured a famous sax solo by Junior Walker, which became a signature song, signature in the song Urgent. A lot of people did not know this, but Thomas Dolby played keyboards on this album. Dolby was well known in the 80s for his hit songs She Blinded Me with Science and Hyperactive. This was definitely their best album up to this point. Even the fillers are good on this album. Head Games is definitely a good rock and roll album. I'm going to give this for 5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed every song on the album. On December 7th, 1984, it was time to release their 5th studio album, Agent Provocator.
Through the clouds I see love shine. It keeps me warm as life grows colder. In my life, there's been heartache and pain. I don't know if I can face it again. Can't stop now. I've traveled so far to change this lonely life.
Even though the band went more commercial on this album and only featured 2 hit singles, the ballad I Want to Know What Love Is, and That Was Yesterday, which is one of my favorites by the band, by the way, I feel this was well-written, good rock and roll album. It fit with the times. This time in 84, going into the mid-80s, commercial albums were starting to become big, and that's what everyone was putting out. So I like this album very much so. I like every song on it. I like the way it was written. I like the music, the lyrics. I'm going to give this album also a 5 out of 5 stars. During this tour in 1985, the band appeared on the very first Farm Aid. Singer Lou Gramm voiced his concern that the band was getting soft after having 2 hit singles that were ballads off the last 2 albums, worried that their rock audience would start to fade. But after ticket sales soared, and after another successful tour, Lou put all his concerns aside. Going into 1986, Mick Jones began producing other artists' albums as a side project, including Van Halen's 5150 and Bad Company's Fame and Fortune. He would later produce Billy Joel's album Stormfront in 1989. So on December 8th, 1987 brings the band's 6th studio album entitled Inside Information.
Say you won't make up your mind tonight. Say you do, say you don't wanna be mine. Say you will, say you won't make up your mind this time. Say you will be mine tonight.
Staying in the commercial route, which was huge for all bands in the mid to late 80s, I feel they stayed with the times and put out another good, complete rock album. This band was on a consistency. That's why I really like this band. The band to be able to continue to write hit songs was very rare through 70s or 80s, which is why I really enjoy this Rockipedia. On this album, Inside Information, this album featured 2 hit singles, Say You Will and another ballad, I Don't Want to Live Without You, I'm sorry. All 10 songs on this album are very well written, very catchy, staying, as I said already, staying very consistent. That's what a big thing about this band, consistency. I also give this album a 5 out of 5 stars. These guys are top-notch songwriters. On May 14th, 1988, the band headlined Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary concert at Madison Square Garden, with other Atlantic artists like Phil Collins, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Roberta Flack jumping on stage with them to sing back vocals with the choir on I Want to Know What Love Is. Also in 1987, Lou Gramm put out a solo album called Ready or Not, which caused tensions with him and Mick Jones. Lou's top song off the album, Midnight Blue, was very successful, and Mick felt it sounded like a song Foreigner should have put out. He felt hurt and a little betrayed by Lou. Then in 1989, Mick decided to put out a solo album of his own, self-titled Mick Jones. Lou said, okay, I'll put out another second solo record also. He released Long Hard Look. But this album led to the departure of Lou Gramm, leaving Foreigner. He went on tour with his solo band, being the opener for Steve Miller. After that tour, Lou went on to form a short-lived band called Shadow King in 1991. Meanwhile, Mick brought in a new singer for Foreigner, Johnny Edwards. And on June 14th, 1991, they released their 7th studio album, Unusual Heat.
Reaches out once more and pulls me through that gate like 100 times before. Ooh, there are the nights when things just work out right. No one could be as close as you and me. Then it all breaks down and we can't find that common ground.
The departure of Lou Gramm definitely affected the band. This was the poorest album to date with record sales. The record sales were plummeting for the band. The fans did not accept the new singer Johnny Edwards. The album peaked to only 117 on the Billboard 200. After reviewing the album, I found there were some decent songs in the album with some good guitar riffs by Mick, but the strong vocals I was used to hearing on previous Foreigner albums definitely lacked on this album. Even though there were some great guitar riffs on this song and very well written musically, I could not get into the song, the singing, or anything else on the album. So I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 stars. For Mick's guitar playing only, am I giving it 2 stars. This also led to the departure of original drummer Dennis Elliott and also bassist Rick Willis decided to leave. Mick, seeing that the band was not doing so well without Lou, he reached out to him. They agreed to meet in L.A., which was during the L.A. riots. The two worked it out, and Lou rejoined the band, bringing his bass player from his old band, Shouting Bruce Turgan, with him. The band also seen the addition of Tom Gimbel, who was the Aerosmith's keyboardist, but joined the band as a guitarist and sax player. Ron Wisco also joined the band as the drummer. But, very unfortunately, in 1997, Lou Gramm was diagnosed with a non-cancerous brain tumor of the size of an egg, which resulted in a 19-hour operation to remove 90% of it. The rest of it was taken care of by radiation. Medications Lou was put on caused excessive weight gain and strain on his vocals. The band went back on the road in 98, but Lou was struggling bad, but managed to get through 2 tours in 98 and 99. The band took the next few years off. The band reunited in 2002 for the 25th anniversary tour. In early 2003, Lou departed from the band once again, not due to his singing issues or health issues, but claimed that he and Mick did not communicate with each other anymore. Mick took a year off, then reformed the band in 2004 after playing a benefit concert for muscular dystrophy. It's always a hard one. Dystrophy, with friends of Jeff Peelson on bass, Tom Gimbel on guitar, Jeff Jacobs on the keys, and Jason Bonham on the drums. Chaz West, who was the vocalist for Bonham's band, joined in for the concert. The lineup stayed together, and then they recruited ex-Hurricane singer Kelly Hansen on vocals. The fans were blown away by how much Kelly Hansen sounded like Lou Gramm. Through all this time, the band released a few greatest hits albums. So the band continued to tour with the lineup for the next few years. A few changes came at keyboards and drummer. Brian Tichy replaced Jason Bonham on the drums. And in 2009, the band released their final album to date, their 9th studio album called Can't Slow Down.
Little taste and you feel the heat coming on strong. There's no way of turning back. Oh, I've got to keep moving on. Do or die every day and night. My eyes are on the prize. With the road underneath my feet,
With power ballads dominating this album like Can't Give Up, Too Late, As Long As I Live, the album stayed in the tradition of this band's songwriting. Other tracks, the self-titled Can't Slow Down and In Pieces, showed that Mick Jones still had a strong songwriting ability. The rest of the album is kind of full of fillers, but I do give it a 3 out of 5 stars for being a good album with the new lineup. In 2012, Chris Frazier replaced Brian Tichy, who left to join Whitesnake as their drummer. And Chris Frazier has remained the drummer for Foreigner to this very day. On June 13th, 2013, Mick Jones and Lou Gramm was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Well deserved. Definitely well deserved. After this, Lou had joined the band from time to time to sing on a few songs during a show. The band is yet to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which goes to show you how many musicians and fans, and myself, disapprove how this association is ran. It's ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is totally ridiculous. You heard me say it many times on other Rockipedias. Foreigner will go down as one of the most successful classic rock bands of all time. Just take a look back at the career of this band and you'll see why. This band has proven time and time again to be one of the greatest classic rock bands of all time and will always be one of my favorite bands of all time. This concludes our Rockipedia for this week. Join us next week for our next featured artist.